Hello and welcome to FatbossTV. Today we're looking at the Hans'gar and Franzok encounter from the Blackrock Foundry on the Warlords of Draenor beta.
This fight is pretty fucking amazing.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and like you'll probably already see in the footage now, yeah, it's pretty much 5 Siegecrafter belts and everything's trying to fucking insta-kill you.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and you're fighting 2 bosses on it as well. It's not even 1 boss, you're fighting 2 bosses on 5 belts, and there's things falling from the sky, and everything pretty much one-shots you.
Yeah.
It's going to be another amazing fight for Looking for Aid, I tell you that much. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
It's going to be amazing.
As we do with all these little preview videos, let's go straight in and talk about the mechanics. And the bosses really are very similar. They share very, very similar spells. One of them, however, does have 2 extra spells that the other one doesn't have. And to start off, they both use something called Body Slam. Now, this is sort of like a 2-part attack. What it'll do is that he'll target a player. It almost seemed to be the target that was furthest away from the boss the majority of the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't that clear though, so he wasn't sure if this was always going to be the case. But when he jumps to this target, he'll deal damage to them and anyone around them within the targeting circle, which will do a little bit of damage with them, not a lot of damage, and it will give them a debuff that increases the amount of physical damage they take by 40% for 20 seconds. And the reason why this debuff is in place is because immediately after he has jumped, he will then do unavoidable AoE physical damage to the entire raid. It doesn't tick that hard, but obviously if you have these debuffs, and these debuffs obviously stack, you're going to take more and more damage. So the idea is when someone does get leaped on, everyone else needs to make sure that they're away from that target. And once he's done his AoE damage, he seems to jump back to the tank, which will actually do AoE damage to the tank as well.
Yeah, it seemed a bit strange.
At least it was applying the debuff. I don't really get it.
It could be similar to how if Beastlord Darmak, the way he worked, where it was kind of on the way back from his charge ability, he hit everyone again, where that wasn't intentional. So I'm pretty sure that may be a bug at the moment. But if it isn't a bug and you do have to deal with this, you just got to make sure that when he does jump back, you got to try and either you got to pretty much make it so that tank who has like several stacks of this debuff, because he will have several stacks of this debuff, you got to make sure they switch around, because otherwise you're just going to get fucked. So yeah. Body Slam, he just fucking jumps about everywhere, move from it, and he does damage. Horrible, horrible business. However, the second move that he does is pretty fucking cool, which is Crippling Suplex. What he'll do, he'll pick up the tank, the target that he's holding at the moment. He'll pick them up and smash them into the second tank, dealing physical damage equal to the maximum health of the tank he picked up. So say he picked up someone with 300k health, he'll then hit the off tank with that tank for 300k. Of course, you can damage mitigate and you've got armor and everything, which will help reduce it and stuff like that. But I think it's quite an interesting mechanic.
Yeah, it's better than Taunt on one stack.
If you have a really, really well-geared tank and then a really shit-geared tank, like one of them's gonna fucking die. But yeah, I think it's a really, really fucking awesome mechanic. So you just gotta make sure you use it hurt.
You did need to use a DR every single time for that. Now, an ability that Franzok only has is Disrupting Roar. This is just an AoE shout that will interrupt any spell casting that's going on at that moment in time. And the cast is quite long, but yeah, when that comes in, just stop casting. And he'll also cast something called Skullcracker, which just throws a hammer to nearby enemies that just deals quite a large amount of physical damage. This only ever seemed to target melee. But again, this next mechanic pumped up, this does increase the amount of hammers that are thrown by the Skullcracker, so more and more people do actually get hit by this ability. And it also increases the amount of damage the bosses do. Basically, the more damage you deal to the boss, the more rage the bosses get, the more annoying their abilities become. The roar becomes quicker, he'll do more jumps during his Body Slam, you know, his 2-part combo, which means even more AoE on the raid. Yeah. Basically, the more damage you deal to them, the fight becomes more annoying.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, that's actually it for the bosses. That's all they do.
Yeah, there's not really many more mechanics, but those mechanics themselves are pretty easy to deal with.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. However, we kind of neglected this so far. We are still on 5 fucking belts with giant things falling from the sky, and I think it's very much worth talking about. Now, one of the things you'll see are these Searing Plates, and they'll basically spawn from the back of the room out of the furnaces, and they basically look like little Pop-Tarts. Little pinky, burning hot Pop-Tarts of doom. So they'll speed towards you, and if you get hit by them when you're standing in it, you'll be taking 200k fire damage, and of course, that's pretty much a high amount of your health, but move out of the Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
Pop-Tarts are bad.
And on the 5 belts, there will be a gap in one of the belts. It seems to work like the fire beams on Siegecrafter, so it's always like moving one over. Except instead of changing periodically, it's like a set pattern.
Yeah.
So it's quite easy to predict, but at some point, if you're on the far left and that was where the gap is, the next gap will be on the far right. So you need to move all the way over. which is kind of irritating. But it's really, really simple when you're in this phase. You just need to make sure that you try and move as a group. Having one person stood out so they can eat all the body slams, so the whole raid doesn't get hit by the body slam, is really, really nice. You can stand in the black strips in the middle between each conveyor belt, which stops you from moving, because you can just stand still. You don't get pulled back by the conveyor belt. You can stand on them, and if you do stand on them and you go between the Pop-Tarts, you do actually get hit.
Oh, right.
Which is a bit of an issue. But you can actually use them to increase your DPS, because obviously you don't need to move all the time. There are moments where you can stand still, and that's where you need to stand if you are going to do it. One thing that's quite important to note is, while these searing plates are up, you can't be really lazy and just like let the belt constantly push you up against the wall, and then just, like, I don't know, blink or get life gripped over the Pop-Tarts every single time, because there is actually heat, like flames coming out from the grills, from the edges of the room, which does ticking fire damage as well.
Yeah, so you can't be towards either edge of the belts, because if you're getting pushed up towards them or whatever's happening, there's just fire there. Fire bad, taking damage.
So you are forced to run around. You can't just stand there.
So yeah, make sure you do. Now, of course, the most impressive of mechanics, fair enough, Pop-Tarts are pretty cool, and fire at the grills are pretty cool, and of course all the boss mechanics is pretty cool, it's great, but there's these giant stamping presses just crushing onto the floor, and they will insta-kill you pretty much. They do like 206k physical damage.
Yeah, it says 206k physical damage, but I'm not going to lie, we had a lot of people get one hit by these. Yeah. I think that damage is flat out wrong. That's what it says in the Dungeon Journal at least, but we're pretty sure that damage is wrong. Of course, people obviously having physical stacks from the leap as well don't help if it is 206k physical damage. But yeah, during this phase, it's literally avoid these stamping presses. This is where you need to make use of standing in between the conveyor belts on the metal strips, because you're not being pulled back. And then when the stamping presses do come down, where it's indicated, where it's glowing, it's like, we're going to get hit here. You just need to move off the strip onto one of the empty belts, because you will get hit if you are stood on these metal strips. Now, the way that these stamping presses come down, it appears to be in a pattern, and there does seem to be 5 patterns. If these patterns are in a set order, we have no idea.
Yeah, it seems to be...
It seems like you get random patterns in a random order. But there is 5 patterns, at least we found out. And really, there's nothing you can really do about these apart from just learn the patterns and you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's very cool, though. I think the patterns look very nice.
It's the fact that, especially towards the end of the fight, where the bosses have lots of rage, which means they're doing all their mechanics far quicker, especially with the body slam. Having to deal with the body slam during this phase is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Because it was just madness.
It's just a lot going on. Yeah. It's pretty much everything wants to kill you, which is wonderful. It's fucking crazy fight though. It looks amazing. I do like the fact that the patterns also look quite nice. You got that nice little triangle pattern. You got a little squares pattern. It's at least it looks good when you're gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
But yeah, a really, really awesome fight. That's pretty much most of the mechanics. You just
the hardest point of the fight is definitely dealing with the stamping presses.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the stamping presses and everything else at the same time.
It's
and having to watch out for everything else at the same time. You need to sit there and work out when the disrupting roar's coming in. Doing damage on the move is going to be like impossible here. You're going to really have to maximize standing on those strips, but obviously not dying as well as the DPS here. And the hitboxes of these bosses was absolutely tiny.
Oh,
Melee was so angry on this boss. Half the time they couldn't fucking attack. And of course the tanks have to move constantly as well because of the stamping presses, which means the boss is flying around all over the room. But I'm pretty sure they'll fix the hitboxes before live. I actually think this is a fight that will be better for melee than ranged for once.
You probably
makes a nice change. If they do decide to actually fix those hitboxes, because they were fucking tiny as shit. But anyway, guys, that is the fight. Really looking forward to do this on Mythic.
It should be bloody awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be good. But thank you very much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this video, please do drop us down a like. And of course, we will see you on the live stream. So thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.